Alrighty, just after 4:20 p.m. Eastern, 2:20 in the Mountain Time Zone, but the Eastern Time Zone is what a lot of people are going to be focused on, especially starting Friday with the Toronto Blue Jays in the playoffs for the first time. Not as long as Seattle, but the first time in a while for the Blue Jays. It feels like, anyway. It's going to be exciting. I think I remember the last time we remember the bat flip and all that. I was on the air on the radio and it was wild. So I can't wait for afternoon baseball here on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily starting Friday. As mentioned, Aaron Judge did not hit a home run today. I do not think he's going to get another at bat. It's the top of the eighth in Texas. The Yankees are up 5-4. So we'll have more on Aaron Judge a little bit later in our fake locker room sound segment. But right now, I want to bring in our guest of the day. It is Erik Grosman from What's Your Call Sports. Erik, it's the best time of the year. You lived it with the Toronto Blue Jays. What do you think the buzz is in the Big Smoke right now with the Blue Jays just a couple of days away from the playoffs?
It's awesome. Like it kind of takes me back, right? So to be able to host it, I mean, just to be able to, we mentioned it, we talked about it last time I was on, home field advantage. I think it's a bit overrated in baseball, but not when it comes to Toronto, not when it comes to the Blue Jays. I've had the luck or privilege to go to many stadiums and work in many stadiums. No stadium vibrates, shakes like the one like Rogers Center does. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget what it felt like.
Yeah, I remember being on the air during those playoff times, and like I said, it was such an exciting. And this is coming from Edmonton, where at this time of the year the Oilers dominate everything, right? Just like the Jets or the Giants do, and things like that. So Toronto really captured the hearts of, I think, all Canadians, just like the Raptors did, and hopefully we'll see it again this year. Not everything, I guess, is 100% decided. I guess there's still a few things that can happen. But the one thing I want to talk about is, here we are talking about this great story about Albert Pujols, and it ties into the playoffs because I think we could be talking about Albert Pujols as a potential playoff MVP at some point. I mean, this guy has 11 of his 22 home runs in the last 41 games. He is going into his final playoff on an absolute heater. Maybe we should be talking about Albert Pujols as an MVP contender in a playoff series at some point.
100%. Like, why not, right? And it's so, I love it when they go out on top. I love it when the greats go out on top. Like David Ortiz did the same thing. It's like they were like, that's, when you grow up, he was my time. Albert Pujols was the best hitter I've seen, right? Him and Miguel Cabrera, like those type of guys. It's like, it's amazing when they can go out on top the way they are. So why not? Why, he's on fire right now. He is completely dialed in. There's no reason why it won't stop when it gets to the playoffs. I can't think of anything. You've been there, done that, right? For him anyway.
That's exactly it. And that St. Louis team is, I think they're they're a team I don't want the Dodgers to face, because although they did beat them last year, but they're that grizzled veteran contender team. Like, you look at the Toronto on the other side, it's a fairly young team. This St. Louis team has, veteran moxie oozing out of everything. When you look at playoff matchups, obviously the one in Toronto is the one that you're most excited about, I'm guessing. But when you look around at the rest of the playoff matchups, what really intrigues you?
Dean, this is the way I look at it, right? Every team that makes the playoffs is obviously really good. Okay, so I'm always a clean slate guy, like going in and all those things. But what I look for is, it comes down to the pitching. Like we've discussed before, who's got the most pitching? It could be anything, starters, relievers. I group them all together as one anyway. How short can you make this game? Yes, it's a 9-inning game, but who are the teams that can make it 7 innings? And if you know what I mean, it's like, who's got those lockdown closers that they're going to go more than 1 inning? It's not the regular season anymore. So they're going to go an inning and a third, an inning and 2/3. Who's got the lockdown closer with the lockdown 8th guy? All of a sudden, that team that has, if that particular team has a lead after 5 or 6, the other team starts squeezing the bat a little bit more because they know what's coming, right? And if you say that out loud to yourself and go, oh, I know what's coming. If you look at the Mets, with the back end of their bullpen. All of a sudden, you get to the 7th inning and you don't have the lead. It goes into your mind. Once it goes into your mind, it's over. It's because everyone's got the physical skills. It's the mindset now at this point. Mental toughness, I guess.
I look at this Mets-Padres series, and it's so interesting because they both have really great starting staffs that are one team is only going to get one game. If the Mets lose, you only get one game out of your incredible staff and you blew the division. This is going to be a disappointment for whoever loses this series because, the Mets had it and they have that great pitching. The Padres made the big trade and everything. So this first series between the Mets and the Padres, the team that loses that is going to feel the most disappointed, in my opinion, out of any playoff team.
Here's how you can look at this is how I'm going to look at that series. And this could be obvious, but it's just the way I feel, right? The Mets will win if the scores were 4-3, 3-2, 2-1, 5-3, something like that. The Padres will win 13-3, 10-2. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm trying to, do you know where I'm going with that? Like, if it's going to be a battle of pitching, if it's going to be a battle of bullpens, if it's going to be a battle of tight-knit, low-scoring games, I'm taking the Mets. But if San Diego wins, it's going to be because they won by a lot. They're not. That's just my feeling. That's just my feeling again. It's the amount of pitches you have. So, starters, if you have 4 starters, but you can only start 2 because let's say it's only 2 out of 3 and you only get 2 games, the other guys will still pitch. Like, I've been hearing a lot of stuff about, for the Jays, like who would be the third, who would go game 3? It's a big discussion between Barrios and Stripling. It's a big discussion. Well, I got news for you. It's going to probably be both anyway in that game, right? So, like, if Barrios starts, which he should, in my opinion, Barrios should start that game because he's more of a starter and he's the investment. This is where you get paid the big bucks for, right? He would start anyway. If he does well, then you don't have to worry about anything. He's going to the 5th or 6th inning and you're good. If he doesn't go well and you start warming the guys up, well, who do you think is coming in the 2nd inning if you get in trouble? Stripling. So either way, it'll work out for you. It'll work out for you either way. You don't have to. I don't think you have to pin down one guy. I think it's whoever your third starter is might go in game 1. Like, you don't have time. This is the awesome part about it. I think we'll talk about managers later, but this is what sets the managers apart here. How well do you use your staff? Like, maybe your third guy in the start rotation can't wait for a game 3. You might have to do game 1, just for example.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, I'm not a fan of bringing in guys that are starters. Like 95% of the time, I'm not a fan of that. When it's like all hands on deck, final game, you're throwing everybody. Like, I didn't like a couple of years ago when Dave Roberts went to Clayton Kershaw in the playoffs, but it's all hands on deck and it's a Hall of Famer. So at that point, I do understand it. Most of the time, I don't like it. Like, I don't like it early in the series when managers do that, because then I think your bullpen's saying, what the hell? Like, if it's all hands on deck and your bullpen is tasked, then I get it. Okay, so the Jays Seattle series is interesting. It's in Toronto. It would have been interesting if it was in Seattle, because you know what happens in Seattle every time the Jays are in town. What do you think that would have been like?
Oh my God. I would actually, you know what? I'd be curious. I would have been curious to see. I know the Jays fans wouldn't want that, but like, I would be curious. I would have to imagine it would be basically more or less the same as it always is when you go there. I don't think it would change. They will spend the money. Like, they will pay to go. That would be really weird, though. It's almost too weird, actually. If you're think about it from the Mariners' point of view.
Yeah,
that's got to be strange. You host your first play. You would, in this case, they would be hosting their first playoff game, God knows, in however long, and next thing you know, they get outdone by the Blue Jays fan. That would actually come in for, thinking from the Mariners side, I wouldn't like that.
No,
actually make me feel bad about that.
It happens in the NFL at times too, right? Where, like it used to happen in San Diego all the time. The San Diego Chargers fans would sell their tickets and there would be always more opposition fans there than anything. Tampa Bay and Cleveland. This is the one series I don't know where to go with, because on one hand you have Cleveland riding the year that they had, and it's almost like making the playoffs is fine. And the other hand, you have Tampa Bay, who always seems to have the talent to get it done. Where do you go in this series?
It's literally flip a coin. For me, this is a flip the coin series. Like, I could see it going any which way. If I'm gonna go with Tampa. I'm gonna go with Tampa, just because I feel like when it's all said and done, it comes into those clutch moments, those situations where you just need to get it done. I think they're going to get it done when they need to. Just getting those runners in a scoring position. Cleveland, I mean, it's also nice to be on Cleveland side because this is bonus now, right? They're in bonus time. This is like kind of house money. Yeah. They're going to go on with literally no pressure. Like, it's the best when you can play relaxed, especially in the playoffs. If you can just be relaxed. They have nothing. They've proven it all. Like, they've already proven it, right? We've seen it. I think ultimately, if the Rays starters do what they're supposed to do, I think the Rays will win. If the Rays starters get in trouble, well, there's the coin flip again. I think it sways back to Cleveland.
Yeah, and it's going to be fun watching this Cleveland team, just like that Baltimore team, in kind of the coming years, to see who can really take that next step and really contend. The one thing we've been talking about with Albert Pujols is the home run chase and trying to get 700. I completely forgot he was, that's the all-time home run leaders right there, 703. But a lot of people, and I, including myself, didn't realize about the RBI number 2 spot that he was chasing, and almost makes you wish he would come back one more year to try and pass Hank Aaron. But to pass Babe Ruth, tough week for Babe Ruth. He gets passed in home runs in a season, and Albert Pujols passes him in RBIs.
Yeah, yeah, tough for him. No, Babe Ruth. I mean, he's always gonna be the best player ever. But but whatever. Look, the number, it speaks for itself. I'm always in the line of thinking, like, if the player wants to come back, like, go for it. But at the same time, it all depends on the makeup of the player. Like, a lot of times they'll be like, well, I don't want to just come back for the sake of it, just to kind of get these numbers, and you take up a spot, and it becomes a bit of almost a distraction. It becomes too me-ish. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think people like players like Albert, like, they don't want that. They're some players are okay with it, but like some crave it, I think. But other ones are kind of like, no, this, I don't want this to be like my last, go around. I think to go out on top the way he is, I think, sure, those thoughts will creep in. He'll be like, well, maybe I could do another. But I think once you make up your mind, go out on top for sure. If he came back, who knows? You never know.
Yeah, it's weird. Aaron Donald did the same. He won a Super Bowl, said he was retiring, wrote his retirement letters, and was back in the game last night. He came back because he can. But Albert has said all along, I am going to retire. I'm going out, and you're right. I think it's a really cool story. You and I have talked about MVP. Oh, sorry. Did you want to add on to that?
No. I agree with you. Like, I think it's just amazing. It's great. Like, just to see that you're the best guys, like the best players that we've seen, kind of go out on top. And just to remember where he came from, like, not drafted in the 40th round, or yeah, right? Like,
it's late,
really late. Was it? No, I think it was somewhere there, wasn't it? Like 20th round or 30th or something. And you know what? I remember, like, I'm going off topic a bit, but I remember asking the scouts, a couple scouts that I knew, like, just with the just killing time, even, just like, hey, what happened here? And he said he came up as a second baseman, and his body wasn't good for a second baseman. That's it. Like, there wasn't anything more. It wasn't like it wasn't. They didn't say anything other than that. It was just a lot of times scouts or whatever, for whatever, they put a lot of thought and a lot of, like, emphasis on the way their bodies are. And if it didn't fit second base position, so, like, well, we don't really have a spot for him, because they didn't think he was going to be an incredible hitter. They thought he'd be good, right? Maybe, yeah. But I mean, we all know what it's like when you draft somebody. There's never a sure thing in baseball to get drafted and then go up to the majors. It's so hard. Yeah, it really is. Like,
the cool story with Pujols is, you're right, 13th round, and Tampa Bay scout Fernando Arango recommended that they sign Pujols, and when they didn't, he quit. that's how much he believed in this guy. And then he's, and nobody did really. He went to the 13th round, but
13th round, right? That guy actually, he quit. That's how sure he was.
Yeah, that's a wild story.
Yeah, right.
Let's talk about the Cy Young race. We've talked about the MVP race, and I think a lot of people have talked about that. Maybe we'll get into that in a bit. But the Cy Young odds, these are the odds that I got last night. I don't know if anybody is catching Justin Verlander, even though he had that stint on the IL. But do you expect him to be the Cy Young winner when all is said and done in the AL?
I do, Dean. I do. I have him as my first. The reason why I have him is you got to take that into account that he got hurt, so he missed some innings there. But it's too good even despite that. You know what I mean? Like to have your ERA under 2 and to have a whip under 1 and to just basically be absolutely dominant every time you take the mound. I mean, look, it's too good despite that he doesn't have the same amount of innings as Manoah. But Verlander's my guy. Who do you have as your next 2? Let's call it.
In the American League, my number 2 guy, I think I might go with Ohtani, actually. I like what Dylan Cease has done, but I'd probably go with Ohtani. And Framber Valdez has just been so automatic. I know I like Alek Manoah, but those other 2 guys I think would be my number 2 and 3.
Oh, yeah.
What about you?
I like those 2 guys. I had. It's so funny that Ohtani's in this conversation after everything we talked about last week. My controversial pick that I'm still staying with it as him as my MVP. I am, despite how crazy Judge is. But let's keep in mind if Judge does win, it's not like I'm gonna go, oh what's going on around here, right? So anyway, be that as it may, I have Manoah and even Shane Bieber in that conversation as well.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
What if Judge doesn't get 62? Does that make Ohtani the MVP?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't change.
Okay.
That part probably doesn't change for me, and it's only because of what Ohtani's done. Judge literally can't do anymore. If there was no Ohtani, if Ohtani was that much even not as good as he is,
yeah,
I would take Judge. It takes Ohtani to be 2 superstars rolled up into one. So it's like just recently, I think he got $30 million in arbitration, right?
Yep. Record.
Right? Think about it this way: what if you cut him? Not literally, put him in half, right? So he's a pitcher and a hitter. So imagine he made $15 million as a hitter, $15 million as a pitcher. Those are 2 undervalued contracts right there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good way of looking at it.
Yeah, what would you pay a pitcher of his caliber and a hitter of his caliber? What would you pay, just for a year, an average salary? What would it be?
Oh, he'd be $20 million easily.
Easily, right? So you're looking at 40. It should be $40 million for the year. 30 is too little, I think.
Yeah,
if he goes like this.
It was a record arbitration, and they'll, obviously it's basically a placeholder for him, for the new owner to come in and then, decide what he wants to do.
Right.
What about in the NL? You mentioned about the innings. Well, nobody's pitched more innings than Alcantara in Miami, and he's not going to pitch again, but that still shouldn't factor it in. I'm a Dodger guy, and I still, because of the workload, I know when we talk about MVPs and playoffs, so Urias should get it because of that. But I still, in a day and age where we don't see pitchers go deep, I like the guy who leads the league in innings and had a pretty good season to boot with other numbers. What do you think?
He's my pick, hands down. Alcantara, that's my pick. I mean, you said it yourself. In today's game, to throw 6 complete games is actually a big deal these days. It really is. Back when we started watching, that was your 5th starter would throw 10 complete games. Yeah. Your 5th starter. So it's him for sure. I mean, the ERA, 2nd in ERA, obviously 1st innings pitched, 6th in strikeouts, 5th in whip. He's my guy. He's my guy. If I had to pick, if I couldn't pick him and I was going to pick the next 2, I like Corbin Burns from Milwaukee as well. I throw him in that mix. I don't see him on your list, but
no, he's not on the odds at all.
Yeah,
those are the official odds from. And I can't remember where I got those from, but he's not even on the list there, which is kind of surprising because he was having a pretty awesome season.
I would check his numbers out. Especially for the fantasy guys out there. They probably have picked up on him. I mean, he led the National League in strikeouts with 238 with the ERA under 3. I mean,
you can't. Weird that he's not on that list. He might be right under Nola. Maybe I just took the top 5, so he's probably. I'm guessing he's on the board at some point. Sure.
And the Milwaukee, they had a great year. Mm-hmm. So, it's, yeah, I mean, I like the list is great. Can't argue with Urias. Like, he's such a stud. Like, his stuff's unbelievable. He as long as he stays healthy, knock on wood, he'll be on this list for every year, I think.
Who's that?
Urias.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know what?
Yeah.
The Dodgers had me at left-hander from Mexico because certainly they had success with Fernando, and I really like Urias, and he piles up the wins. It's funny. Walker Buehler was always the heir apparent, and now they have so many options. You got Buehler, you got May, you got Gonsolin, you got Urias. Like they're an embarrassment of riches in their starting rotation in LA, and maybe that's where let's go next is the manager of the year, and something that oftentimes in leagues the coach of the year or the manager of the year is given to like the what's the most improved team, and certainly you're getting that in the Guardians because Terry Francona is going to get a lot of ink when it comes to the manager of the year. But in the NL side, it's actually probably going to go to a guy who won the most games, which is such a novelty. And I mean, this Dodger team is top 5 all time for single season wins, and they're not getting talked about because they're so far ahead. And sometimes people could say, oh, they got such a good team, Dave Roberts isn't the manager of the year. But I think this year, he really has earned the manager of the year.
I can't argue it. Like, we just take it for granted. We just take the organization, how well they are. Like, it's a well-oiled machine. The Dodgers are they are the perfect franchise. They're just run from top to bottom. I always say, ownership, like, your team's only going to be successful by your owners. That's it. Like, your owners, they literally lead the way. They pave the path, and it just trickles on down. Once it's good up there, it just trickles on down. That Dodgers team, I mean, it's not an accident that they keep getting these like everyone you just mentioned, right? So you have, like, I don't know how you can argue Roberts. Just don't take it for granted. But not everyone can manage a team like that. Like, you can also screw it up.
Yeah.
Like, people don't realize that as well. Like, you're like, oh, it's so easy. All you have to do is turn the lineup in and just sit back and watch. Again, I always I don't tell everybody, but like, the thing to keep remembering about managers is always not what you see on the field. What you see on the field is the game. Everything you work to goes into that game to manage it. The way, you draw up your plans and everything. It's everything you don't see. And he must be acing that. And we don't see it, but he must be acing that because even the talent, you won't get that record if the manager doesn't have things at that nice even. You know what I mean? That nice even keel. You won't get the results. You won't get it. And that's why managers get fired. They get in the way sometimes. They get in the way. And I always thought Cito was the best at that. Like, for those Jays teams, there was no better manager for that team. Just don't ask him. He's not going to go and manage the Tampa Bay Rays. Like, he can't mix and mango the line. He doesn't want to. It's not his style. It's not what he
was a feel guy, right?
Yeah. Roberts is in this. I gotta think that Roberts and Cito are in that same Dusty Baker, same thing, right?
Yeah,
they're in that same class. That like, they know exactly what to do with the people they're managing. It's more about the relation, the communication, the building you have with those players, and knowing what they're all about, than it is really pinch hitting for this guy or putting that guy batting 5th or 6th. Like,
yeah. By the way, Judge just ground out into a double play, so he's going to end. I'm guessing that's his. I didn't even think he would get a 5th at bat, but this game, it's now 5-4, bottom of the 9th. So I guess if Texas ties it up and it goes a few extra innings, he might get another one. But I really think Aaron Judge is gripping it. I think he is really, really wanting that number 62 so bad. And yeah, it's kind of cool that it might happen in the very last game of the season, but I'm sure he would like to have gotten it done. The only thing I will say is this might be a good thing for Yankee fans for the playoffs, because if he once the 62 chase is over, maybe he lightens up and just swings freely, because it really seems like this is kind of getting to him a little bit.
Hitting is the hardest thing to do in all of sports. It's the reason why when you fail 7 out of 10 times, you're amazing, right? You're incredible if you fail. Can you imagine if you failed 7 out of 10 things that you did every time? You wouldn't be considered incredible, right?
I wouldn't be married anymore.
Well, right? Yeah, touche, right? So with Judge, the only way to hit, the only chance you have is to have a clear mind. It's got to be clear. To focus, like, you got to be clear. It is so hard. It is so hard when you have that thing. It overpowers your brain. Your brain is such a powerful thing. It's your biggest muscle in your body, is your brain. Mm-hmm. And if that's not clicking because of this distraction, if you will, it's so hard. You just hope that a pitcher makes a mistake and he just hits it. That's really it. But it's so hard also because he can't tell the pitcher how to pitch to him. So if the pitchers don't want to pitch to him, and he knows and he's got this like tick tick tick, I got to get my 62 before the season ends. You're gonna swing at bad pitches. You're gonna swing at bad pitches. You're probably not gonna hit a home run. So unless you're Vladimir Guerrero, but and going back to your manager of the year, if you didn't have the Dodge, if you didn't, how about what's your take on Showalter, Buck Showalter?
Yeah, I think he's done a great job. I think that's kind of in the Terry Francona kind of area too, right? Where this is a guy who's turned things around, and again another team that's probably, like you said, playing with house money. So I don't know. If I look in the National League. Obviously, I think what Atlanta did is pretty impressive as well after losing Freddie Freeman. So, 100%. I'm looking at St. Louis, Phillies back in, but probably I'd throw it at Atlanta if I wasn't going to give it to the Dodgers.
Yeah. Again, we take it for granted, right? How good of a job he's done. It's just like, but they have so much talent. Again, but someone has to make sure that all mixes together and that it's a balance and that it actually translates onto the field for wins and losses. That's 100%. Not. If people think that's easy, I'm telling you, it is not.
Yeah. It's like coaching Canada's Olympic hockey team. It's not that easy, even though you have stars or whatever. So
not everyone can do it.
A lot of it is when you have stars is managing the personalities and making sure everything's fine that way. And then the rest kind of handles itself. And that's probably what you said about Cito Gaston. What he was so good is managing those personalities.
Yep. I'm not going to get in the way. Here's what everybody's job is. You guys all have a clear job to do. I'm going to give it to you because I trust you. If I take you out, if I move you down in the lineup, if I take you out, I've just showed you I've lost confidence in your ability, and that's going to hurt you on the field. So I'm going to stick with you, whether anyone likes it or not. Sorry, that's the way I manage, and it translated into 2 World Series, so he didn't do too bad of a job.
Yeah, worked out pretty well. All right, before we let you go, got to tell us about What's Your Call Sports. I love what you guys are doing. I threw a video together for you guys. I know some other people have, so tell everybody where they can find it and how much fun they can have.
Yeah, absolutely. What's Your Call Sports? Go to our YouTube channel, WYC Sports on YouTube. You can check us out on TikTok. We have a pretty good channel there as well. Our team does an amazing job. There's about 4 or 5 of us, and we get together twice, 2 or 3 times a week, and we're trying to come up with some ideas for content. So soon we're going to come out with, we want people to voice their opinion on robot umpires. That's what we asked, Dean, we asked you to do that. Andy as well. So we want your opinion. We want your take. This, we haven't seen anything like this before, and it could change the whole complexity of the game, really. All of a sudden you have an automated strike zone. What's that going to do to the game, right? So what's your call? We want to hear everybody's opinion. They're all good. We'd love to talk about it. That's what it's all about. It's engagement. And, you're talking about something that you enjoy. It's sports, it's baseball, but it's also the ins and outs of the game and things that, what do you like to see? What do you want to watch? What do you find interesting? That's WYC Sports. What's your call?
Well, I always say an opinion can't be wrong, so bring the opinions, be respectful, and have some fun with your fellow sports fans. I love chatting with you, Erik. It's such a neat insight that you bring, and I can't wait to do it next Tuesday when we're actually going to have playoff games. I'm like, Friday afternoon is going to be, it's kind of like Christmas for me, so I can't wait for it, and I can't wait to chat with you next week again.
It's going to be great. Absolutely. I enjoy doing this as well, Dean. Anytime, my friend.
All right. There's Erik Grosman from What's Your Call Sports. Check it out. At WYC Sports on Twitter and get in the game, get in the debate. Facepalm Circus says Judge is trying too hard. Yeah. And Maria says, Erik, you're awesome. So there you go. The listeners and the viewers continually want more Erik. Less Dean, more Erik. Great baseball chat, insight that not everybody has, and that's why we love bringing, although Facepalm Circus, JP says the largest muscle is the gluteus maximus. Well, the most important muscle is the brain. Let's go with that. The most important muscle is your brain.